Vischer. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm here with Sky Jatani.
Hi, Phil.
Hi, Sky. And Christian Taylor.
That's my name.
Yeah.
Hi.
I didn't want to wear it out by saying it too rapidly. It's nice to have everybody together. We've been traveling like mad.
I had a great weekend in San Antonio, but I heard you had one in New York.
Yeah, you
Where
were
were
in
you?
New York. I was here. I was in Indiana last week at Friday, but then I came home.
Wow.
Yeah, so we needed to sing a theme song, and I figured out Boo Boo Bird apparently is a character from a VeggieTales video that I'm not familiar with. So that's a little embarrassing.
Is that one post?
Yeah.
Post the big.
Yeah, and
whatever.
it's a short. It was a short from apparently Abe and the Amazing Promise.
Okay.
Which I did voice work for, but I don't remember.
But you didn't do Boo Boo Bird.
I don't remember what a Boo Boo Bird is.
Okay.
I don't have any idea what a Boo Boo Bird is.
Is that like a dodo bird?
I think so. It's a bird that makes boo-boos.
Oh.
Which I don't think means poop. Can I say poop on
It
our
means
podcast?
owies.
Yeah. Some people say boo-boo. It's like, oh,
No, that's poo-poo.
Gotta go boo-boo.
No, it's
Some families
Look,
do
Mommy,
that.
I have a
No
boo-boo.
family does that. No family
Let's
does
make
that.
a whole list of the different
No
names.
kid says, Mommy,
Of the
kiss my boo-boo,
anachronisms for.
and thinks it's poop.
Okay, you're probably right.
He's right.
I don't really know who to do, so I'm just going to sing it as...
Why don't you try to do a really good job singing it as Phil?
Hey, it's a podcast. What do you know? Hey, it's a podcast. And there's video. Hey, it's a podcast, so lend an ear. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. We'll talk to Sky and Christian too, and we've got no guest except this anonymous singer here for you. I love that chord. Hey, it's a podcast, so lend an ear. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right about here.
So I want you to do like a Ricky Ricardo at some point. I was at this
Like a
hotel in New York, and during breakfast at the breakfast buffet, they only had I Love Lucy playing in the mornings.
That's awesome.
I haven't seen I
Wait.
Love Lucy in forever.
At the breakfast buffet, they have I Love Lucy playing?
Yeah.
I actually went to a restaurant in, where was that? In D.C. No, that was not in D.C. It was in Jackson, Mississippi.
Yeah.
And it was called Babalu.
Yeah.
You know, that's where it was called Babalu's. And it had a big, huge screen. And they played these, Ricky and Lucy videos all during dinner.
They always reminded me of my parents.
Those were very formative, I think, for me.
Watching I Love
Lucy reruns.
How did it form you?
It told you how a husband and wife were supposed to relate to one another.
Okay.
That the wife was supposed to cry if she didn't get her way.
And be sneaky.
And the husband was really more of a father to the wife, more than a husband,
That's
so the
true.
wife, wah, I wanna. And the husband, Lucy, it's time to face the music. We can't do that.
That's Guido Sarducci again.
that was
That's
Guido.
not Ricky.
I'm sorry. I'm not, my Cuban
You
is,
have to
is
practice.
not.
Get your ethnicity straight.
Not well rehearsed. I was in Indiana last week. I was a chapel speaker at Taylor University. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And I have to declare, so we have some new fans listening from
College
Taylor.
kids?
Yeah, because I told them about the podcast from Upland, Indiana.
Hey ho, Ivanhoe's.
Sure.
What does that have to do with anything?
Oh, you don't know if you
No.
haven't been there.
I don't know, and I have been there.
Ivanhoe's?
Yeah.
It's like the
what's that?
only hangout place in Upland, Indiana. You go
Okay.
you get ice cream and shakes and stuff. It's like where every
go there.
It's the bar for Taylor University.
every couple
The
that's
ice
ever
cream bar?
gotten married from
Yeah.
Taylor University had their
Gets-
first date at Ivanhoe's.
Oh, but they don't get engaged at Ivanhoe's.
Maybe
Not a
they do,
tradition
but
to
it's-
pop the question over a Sunday.
There's like nothing. I went to college in a small rural town.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Was?
Oxford, Ohio,
Okay.
right? Miami
But what was
University.
Miami?
Right.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
when they first invited me to Taylor, they said it's out in the middle of nowhere. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I've been out in the middle of nowhere.
No, it really is.
It really is.
It really
and
is.
when Ivanhoe's is
and I
the
kept
only
asking people while
establishment.
I was there, why is this here? Here, and no one could really answer that question. They assumed it had something to do, and it actually started out, they believe, in Fort Wayne as the Fort Wayne Bible College or something, and then moved out there and to get more land, possibly. But it's just
It's in the middle of cornfields.
the exit you take to go to and Indiana Wesleyan is right there also. The two colleges are 5 minutes apart from each other in the middle of nowhere. It's like someone just said, this is the part of Indiana where we will put Christian colleges.
I think it's because then the students can't really really get into any trouble.
That is true. That is
Except
true.
with each other.
But the exit you get off of is Gas City.
Yes, I stayed at that hotel. Did you?
Yeah, I stayed at the Gas City
Smells.
Hotel.
Does it?
No, it doesn't. And so I'm asking
so
people
gullible.
why, and apparently there was gas there, oil there. They found oil there, and they were thinking it was a lot, and it would just revolutionize the whole area, and then it ran out. So now it's kind of an ironic name. Gas City.
It should be Gas
And
X City.
We don't have any oil.
They have but there's a big gas station there.
Okay, why is this relevant
That
to our
doesn't do it.
podcast?
So I was at Taylor. And I have to say, I've done a lot of chapels. That was probably the most enthusiastic crowd I have ever talked to.
Did they clap and hoot and holler?
It went. When they introduced me, a bunch of guys in the balcony started chanting "Veggie Tales."
No.
Oh yeah, there was like chanting. It was a hootenanny.
Do you think there's a correlation between how isolated those people are,
not much to do,
and how excited they were that you came?
I don't know, but it was fun. It was the only time I've ever
Were you like Stephen Colbert? Like
I think so, yeah.
Veggie
Where I've
Tales.
ever done the voices, actually, I couldn't understand what they were saying.
Okay.
So I had to stop them and say, "What are you chanting?" And they said, "Veggie Tales." I said, "Oh, okay. We need to work on our diction," because that was a little tough. But it's the only time I've done voices, and I haven't been able to finish any of the lines.
they finished them for you?
No, they just stopped me with craziness.
Applause and
It
cheers.
was just, it's Archibald Asparagus. And I just had to stop. I was like, okay, well, those 3 words was enough with Archibald.
That's awesome.
Very enthusiastic folks. Glad that I could come to Taylor. And so we did a Q&A afterwards with about 100 students. And I'm talking to them, and I said, "Hey, I haven't mentioned the podcast. I should mention the podcast." So I said, "I'm doing a podcast, and I'm doing it with my friend Sky Jitani from Leadership Journal." And this guy, like in the middle of the room, I see him visibly go,
Nuh-uh.
yeah, like his head exploded. And so I talked to him afterwards, and he said, "Okay, you and Sky Jitani are my 2 favorite chapel speakers of all time."
Wow.
The fact that you're doing a podcast together blew my mind. And he wanted to know, how many episodes have you done? Because I'm going to go
he has some
listen
catching up to do.
all of them. So you in Upland, Indiana, who are listening to this now or watching it on video, hey, it's got video. And do you know what you have on video that you don't have on audio?
Video, pictures.
Besides that,
What, Phil?
What?
facial expressions. See, if you're listening on audio, you don't know what I just did.
So you better watch.
So check out the video.
Don't you think Phil and I should go on the road together?
Well, yeah, as long as I get to come along.
Next
We're
week?
going to Biola.
Next week we're going to be at Biola speaking.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys planned
The
this
same day.
in advance, right? So I'm totally left out. You didn't even tell
Sorry.
me about it till you
You
already
have
brought
to-
the
Here's what happened, honestly. Biola contacted me and said, "We'd like you to come in. We're going to do this special thing, and we're going to make it all about the with God kind of stuff from my book." I said, "Great, I'm happy to come." And then the organizer said, "I want to talk to you about other possible speakers." And I said, "Okay." So we're on the phone. He's like, "Have you ever heard of this guy, Phil Vischer?"
He obviously doesn't listen to the
He
podcast.
obviously didn't listen. And I said, "Yeah, I've heard of him." And he said, "Do you think he would be a good fit for the same conference?" And I said, "I don't know about that.
Highly questionable.
Highly questionable." So, but anyway, as it turns out, Phil and I, independently of this podcast, have been asked to speak at the same college on the same day.
Funny,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Oh, hilarious.
Now, Christian, you have to remember something.
That I'm just a...
When this all started, how did it start? I said, Sky and I are going to host this talk show, and would you be the producer?
Is that how it started?
Yes, that's how it started.
You're the
Okay.
Marcy.
And then I said, hey, if you're the producer, you could sit in on it like some producers do. So, and that was from the beginning.
All right.
Yeah. So it's,
I'm chopped liver.
there's no,
I get it. I
no,
know.
there's no,
I know
there's
where
no
I fit.
demotion. It's just a slightly
Okay,
different
would somebody
role.
please invite the 3 of us to come where? I'd really, really appreciate
a live
that.
show.
Oh, yeah, a live show. Let's do a live
Yeah.
Okay.
video cast somewhere.
A tour. We'll do a tour. So,
Awesome.
driving back from Indiana.
Did you have a revelation from God?
Kind of. I heard him speak to me through billboards.
That's like, there's a movie about that
There are
already.
only 3 kinds of billboards between here and Upland, Indiana.
Oh, I know what you're going to
Yeah.
say.
Okay.
They're the ones we don't want to
There
mention.
are gentleman club billboards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are fireworks billboards.
Yes.
And there are quotes from scripture
Evangelistic
Yes.
billboards.
That's right.
Yeah.
And there's a
pretty
huge,
much it.
gigantic cross. Isn't there that gigantic, enormous cross?
That's if you're
Yeah.
closer to Indy, I think. Yeah, if you're
Yeah.
driving down towards
80
Indy.
something.
On 65.
Yeah, on 65.
Oh.
So I saw the first, Christian billboard, and I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. And then I saw another one, and they're not related. It's not like the same people putting them up as different people throwing up billboards.
Do they actually say
as an
who's put 'em?
outreach?
I thought it's just...
A couple of them do, many of them don't.
Okay.
So it's not like, you may be in the South on some little back road and you see the farmer has propped up a sign in his yard about Jesus or
Right.
the second coming or something. It's not like that. This is on like I-65, and I-80. These are
But you know what? They're not very
huge.
memorable because I only remember the gentlemen's clubs and the fireworks ones. So they're not really doing their job, I don't think.
Well, so I wrote down how many? 1, 2, 3, 4 that I
Okay.
thought were worth discussing.
Great.
And this is a segment I like to call "What's the State of the Art in Christian Billboards?" It'll be a recurring segment.
Awesome.
Okay, the first one, huge black.
You didn't stop and take pictures of these?
No, I should have,
You
but
should
that
have.
would have required stopping on a busy interstate, which I don't think is safe. I don't think that's safe, Scott.
Driving on those is not quite
Yeah.
safe.
Huge black billboard, huge white letters. This if it would be like the war is over kind of type on a
Like 10,000
yes,
font.
a 1,000,000-point font.
Okay. Sans serif?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It's bolder that way.
I think it was Helvetica Bold or Impact.
Moving on.
Hell is real. That's all it says.
Was that as you were entering Indiana or as you were leaving?
I was going south,
You are so quick.
deeper into Indiana. Hell is real. Hell is real. And so immediately I start thinking, okay, who's the target audience for this? And what is the response desired? Because whoever paid for that said, if I do this, then people are going to say, oh my goodness, what was I thinking? I better change my ways. And it occurred to me that kind of sentiment, the hell is real reminder for America, probably worked better when America believed in hell.
True.
But that now that it's the equivalent of saying, because it's a reminder, I forgot.
Aliens are
I better
real?
change my way. No, it's the equivalent of saying Santa Claus is watching you, kids.
Yes.
So then you say, oh, I better be good. I better not cry. I better not pout.
Right.
I better be good. I'm telling you why. Because
So it works because you believe in
It
it.
works if you, but
There's
then
buy-in.
I just needed the reminder.
at
Right.
some point, kids stop believing in Santa Claus. Can I say that on the air? I'm very sorry. Many kids, not all. Sky still believes in Santa Claus.
I still believe.
And so does Christian. But some kids stop believing in Santa Claus. And at that point, a reminder of, hey, Santa Claus is coming to town. He's making a list, so you better watch out. Is just like, no, he's not. And you just, it's that meaningless.
Those people are crazy.
And I think that's where our culture has come to. Our culture has stopped believing in Santa Claus if Santa Claus was hell. And so the reminder does nothing. I think it does nothing.
If you could sit down across the table from the person who put up that billboard, who funded that billboard,
Yeah.
whatever, what would you tell them?
I would.
That is
I
a
would.
great question.
I would ask them questions. I would ask them leading questions. I'd
Such
say,
as?
what was your goal?
To remind people that hell is real.
What was the outcome?
I'll play the devil's advocate.
Okay.
Right.
What was the outcome you were hoping for?
I wanted people to take a moment as they drive to actually think about their eternal destiny.
But they don't believe in hell anymore.
But maybe the Holy Spirit will use the billboard to convict them that it's real.
Okay.
You're really good at this.
Go for it. You and the Holy Spirit, go for it.
It's my money, leave me alone.
So a day later, I was driving back up that same road and got to that same point and discovered that on the other side of that same billboard, the back side, which I didn't notice going down, it said, Jesus is real. And I thought, okay, now, is there a sequence that I'm supposed to? Is this based on the assumption of round trip? And is it based on the assumption of starting in Chicago and going into Indiana and then coming back, or the other way around? So did I get it in the right order to have the desired effect?
Huh.
Yeah.
That's an interesting. You know what? That billboard represents two different philosophies.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Of evangelism. Do you lead with Jesus or do you lead with damnation? It all depends which way you're
And
driving.
it's a flip of a coin.
That's right.
For the trucker.
What they should do is have one of them printed properly and the other one printed in reverse so that when you look in your mirror, you can read it, right?
That would be because everyone looks at the backs of billboards in their mirror as they drive by.
I just try to ignore all the billboards between here and Indiana.
What was also notable about that one is that it had no follow-up messaging at all. There was no go to this
There was
website.
no discipleship.
Was there like a little Bible reference anywhere?
No, nothing. Nothing. All we're giving you is hell is real and or Jesus is
Did
real.
it look recent or was it faded?
No.
And,
This is pretty new.
It had to be recent because I have not driven to Indiana in a while. I haven't seen it.
That was the first one I saw.
Okay.
Then I went by a billboard that had a big, very nice picture of an open Bible on it. And it said, the Holy Bible, absolute, inspired, final.
Was there a period after each of
Yes,
those words?
there was.
That's dumb.
I like that.
That's like little purple different. Wasn't that pill? What was that drug called?
Yeah, sure.
Nuprin or something.
I kind of like that device, that literary device.
The
Do you not
periods?
Well, Sky says it's dumb.
I think it's
like
cliche at this point. It's overused.
You guys can
Well,
duke
that's
it out.
probably true.
Okay, to me, that sounds less like an invitation and more like a threat.
Say it again.
It's like the Holy Bible, absolute, which means you can't argue with it. It is what is true. Inspired. Okay, whatever. Final. That means the final word in anything. If you think it's okay to be gay, you're wrong because I've got a Bible. You know, if you think it's okay to be a socialist, you're wrong. I mean, whatever it is that you're arguing for, I will trump you with the Bible.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons.
That makes me not want to read the Bible.
That's one of the things that people complain about Christians shutting down discussion by throwing in the Bible and saying, boom, settled.
At the point where you have resorted to a billboard kind of tactic, I mean, that's the visual equivalent of screaming, right?
Yeah.
At that point,
Well,
we've probably lost the argument.
I think it's the visual equivalent of flying over a population and dumping leaflets out of a plane. It's just random. You have no idea who you're talking to.
Or scattering seed broadly on dry ground and fertile ground in a pathway.
Yeah, and most of it doesn't grow.
That's right.
Yeah.
But some of it does.
Yeah, but that was done better, I think, because you were actually spreading
Well, there's
the gospel.
really no
The
way to know.
assumption is-
There's really no way to know
There is
at
no
all.
way to know.
Third one.
Oh, we're still going.
They get better. Third billboard I passed, and the false prophet will come from the church at Rome.
Oh, goch.
I wonder if
That really
one-
was, huh?
If that just came up.
Huge billboard on.
Was there any visual with it or just black with white
I mean,
letters?
out of all the
it
popes
was
you
kind
could
of
pick.
black and white background, kind of scary Armageddon-ish background. So
I mean, are they saying
Just
that the Pope is a
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
Yeah,
random
so out of-
anti-Catholic billboard in the middle of Indiana.
Yeah, but out of all the popes, I would think this
I
one
know.
would not be the
This
one to
seems
pick on.
the least likely Antichrist
Yeah.
Pope I have personally ever witnessed.
I agree, but maybe that's the point. He's a lion
But
in
doesn't
sheep's
that
clothing.
seem like a bit of an internal argument? I mean, is that something you throw out at the public?
You know, there's some great people in Indiana, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, this
But,
one might have been across the border into Illinois, so
Really?
it
But-
may be our fault.
You know, I went to school pretty close to there. And,
Yeah.
and I was shocked to learn that Indiana has more KKK members than any other state in the country.
It does?
You'd think it'd be like from Mississippi or Alabama.
what's your tongue?
Well, no, but Deep South. But it's not. Indiana has more than anyone else.
Do you know what I have to say about that?
What? So it is, it can...
If you're just listening and not watching, you have no idea what I just did. So come on, watch the video.
Yes, you can definitely find some folks who have some antiquated views in Indiana.
Is that the last one?
No, there's one more.
There's one more. And this is supposed to be the best one, right?
No, this is just the order that I drove by them. The last one was actually in Illinois, coming back up. It just said this: after you die, you will meet God. Period.
Wow.
Is that a threat? Is
I
that
don't
a
know what is
promise?
that.
Is that a...
Because my response, because I always put myself into the seat of just a secularist driving along, and my immediate reaction is, your point?
Hey, if I was a
What am I
secularist,
supposed to do with
my
that?
immediate thought would be, I've always wanted to meet Morgan Freeman. This could
Or
be a
if you're
good thing.
older, George Burns.
George Burns,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, was there any follow up with that one?
There might have been a website on the bottom of that one, so I
Okay.
guess you could have gone somewhere. I think we are assuming, and for some people this may be true, that there are people we're talking to people that were raised Christian and are just kind of lapsed. So it's kind of the kick in the pants. Say, remember what you used to believe.
Well, frankly, that's how most of the American church still operates. Even the megachurch movement is really predicated on trying to win people back who have some kind of Christian
lapsed,
affinity. Right?
nominal.
And it's having less and less effectiveness.
Yeah.
I personally don't think this billboard thing is the solution. I mean, in fact, I think more often than not, it's probably people driving by going, oh, there's those crazy Christians again. Boy, I'm glad I'm not one of those.
Right. There's one point on that road where there's a gentleman's club billboard and a Christian billboard directly across the road from each other. And
Do they reference each other?
No, but they should. Because one of them says, I think it's this one actually, one of them says, when you die, you will meet God. And the other one says, all the liquor, none of the clothes. It's like, I'm thinking the atheists are funnier.
So what? This would be a fun little experiment for our audience. If you had to put up a Christian billboard,
Yes.
what would it say?
What would your Christian billboard say?
Maybe we could give a prize to the best one.
Yeah, if we could ever get that part worked
Now
out.
you're creating homework. We don't have the staff for this, Sky.
Are
unless,
you getting
unless
paid
you're
something
doing it.
I don't know about?
I'm
I could
busy.
have my assistant do it, except I don't have an assistant.
I don't either.
Yeah, and we have an unpaid producer.
Yeah,
So she.
true.
Look, there's got to be some high school students out there who want to have some fun.
What we need is I want the T-shirt thing to get going.
Yeah. See, if we had swag, if we had some merch, then
could
we
give
could
that away.
We
Right.
could give that stuff away as prizes for having the funniest or best or most insightful Christian billboard.
I was walking through the airport.
Wait, are we changing subjects?
Yes.
See, it's driving on the road.
I want to
walking
ask
through-
you one question. What billboard would you put up?
God loves you. I don't know if there's anything else short enough to go on a billboard that can have a positive impact other than God loves you.
That's a good point.
Honestly.
How about get off your cell phone unless you want to meet me? God.
I love that. Now that's
Or
funny.
All the liquor, none of the clothes really isn't a good
Or
idea.
how about all of the clothes, none of the liquor, sponsored by the Southern Baptist?
That's awesome. All right, that's a
Okay.
good start on the contest.
There you go.
All
Okay,
right.
I don't think that's working. I don't think, same thing with leaflets. I don't think it's a really effective evangelism device other than actually trying to meet people that are different than yourself.
But Dave Johnson, pastor at Church
Open Door.
Open Door in
Yeah.
Minneapolis, he said to me once, in the Old Testament, it was considered a miracle when God spoke through an ass, but now he does it every Sunday. Have you heard that before?
Yeah.
So the
From you.
Yeah, I like that line. But the point is, God can speak through anything, anyone.
Yeah,
anywhere.
I know,
Now, it doesn't
I
mean
know.
you should.
For me-
no one's going to put a donkey up in the pulpit on Sunday going, okay, speak, God. But
Yeah. For
technically
me,
it's possible.
For me, I know that God can use things like that. For me, the question always is, for every person that might pull closer, how many is it pushing
Sure,
away?
yeah.
And I'm very
point.
concerned more about the pushing away of the culture through just ineffective communication, just bad stuff. Okay, so
Okay.
I was walking through the airport.
Yeah.
And I
which
was on-
airport?
And you saw more billboards.
Midway, I think.
Oh, yeah.
No, I was on a moving sidewalk. Okay.
I
And,
know
and,
those.
and everyone know what a moving sidewalk is? It's like a sidewalk that moves.
moves.
it's a walkway. It's
And
a
you
moving
think they're
walkway.
new and very modern? Do you know when the first moving sidewalk was introduced?
yes, the 50s. Earlier?
First moving sidewalk was at the Columbian Exposition of 1893 in Chicago, the World's Fair.
Wow.
Yeah, they didn't catch on because it was impractical. But that was the first moving sidewalk. Anyway,
They weren't quite lazy enough yet to enjoy them the way we
I'm
were.
on a moving sidewalk and I have a profound realization about life.
Wow. What is that?
Can't wait.
Life is like a moving sidewalk.
How, Phil?
Well, you see, okay, you're born on one end.
Okay.
And then you just slide along. You just slide along till you get the other end and you die. You die at the end of the moving sidewalk.
Especially if you don't step off.
You have no control over the speed. You can complain, you can whine, you don't know how long your moving sidewalk is, and you don't know how fast it's going. Okay, and these are things...
You can totally walk backwards.
You can't on the moving sidewalk
you
of
can.
life.
Well, that's where the analogy breaks down,
Yeah,
isn't
but
it?
come on, give
life
me a
is
little
like a
latitude.
moving
Give me a little
sidewalk
latitude.
where you're stapled to the rubber mat.
Well, then my life is like a bunch of people who are standing on the wrong side and blocking my way.
Okay,
'Cause, you know, like
that's
standers
good.
to the right,
Well,
walkers
yeah,
to the
yeah.
left.
You
Well,
can also say that it's like a moving sidewalk, and you never know who's going to come past you or bump into you or stop your way.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay, what
That's not what I'm
Let's
saying.
get
Let's
back
let
to
him
Phil's
finish.
side.
Yeah,
All right.
thank
ahead.
you. So when you're a kid, okay, you get on the moving sidewalk and it can't move fast enough. You know, it's like, why is this so slow? I want to be up there. I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to, I want to be bigger.
so they run.
I want to be, no, you don't move up and down. It's
You have to
Sorry.
stay put.
Okay, we're staying put. Okay.
because you're stapled to the moving sidewalk
got it.
until
I'm
it
with you.
dumps. Because if you could move, everyone would stand at 25 years old and would never move.
Good point.
One way or
Okay,
the
so-
other.
so,
you're
all right.
moving along. When you're a kid, you want it to go faster, faster, faster. Because I want to be able to do this, and I don't want my parents to tell me what to do, and I want to be my own boss. And then suddenly you're moving along, and suddenly you hit a point where you realize you are the age of all the cool people on TV. And you go, yeah, this is it. This is what I've always wanted. I've wanted to be the age of the cool people on TV. But then you say, but I'm broke. I can't do any of the things that the cool people on TV do because I don't have any money. Why don't I have the money to go with the fact that I'm here now? This is my moment. This is it. You don't have any money, so you have to start working. And you have to work to get the money. And so you work and work and work to get the money. And by the time you've actually say, I've got some money now, you turn around and the cool people on TV are now younger than you are.
It's true.
And many people, they spend the rest of their lives just facing backwards, staring back at that moment in time where they had their youth, they had their beauty, where life
You're
was
about to make me cry. Can you stop?
full of
It's just
opportunity.
enough.
And now you have the money, but you don't, it's like it's gone. And so people do so
Telling me
much.
that we're dying. The end is near.
People do so much of their lives just looking backwards and trying to get back to that point. And here's the reason why. You want to know why? Because
Why,
then once you
Phil?
get past that point, it just feels like the sidewalk just goes faster and faster.
Yes.
You know, you get older and it's
Right,
just like,
yeah.
wow.
Like
it's
mine
just,
is
it's like
speeding.
accelerating. And so many people live in the regret of, I was walking with my dad after my dad turned 70 and we were walking out on his land. He has like 60 acres of woods. And at one point he just said, because he was having a hard time, hiking up something. And he said, man, I don't like getting old. And I just remember turning to him and saying, but it beats the alternative. Because the alternative is dying young. There's the only alternatives.
I kind of think I'd rather die young.
And I think a lot of people would say that. And then that's why I think we idealize people like James Dean, people like Marilyn Monroe,
Right.
people like Princess Diana, because they had it. And then poof, they're eternally, it feels like they're eternally in that sweet spot of the moving sidewalk of they were young and they had resources. Okay, I just have to point something out though. People that are actually young with all the resources they want are the most insufferable people on earth. That's Paris Hilton, Miley Cyrus,
Justin
Bieber. It's all the people that we talk
Well,
about
we
that
think
you
they're
don't want to.
miserable. They may think they're having the time of
sure,
their life.
they think they're having the time of their life, but they're insufferable.
But don't you think
they're
that,
insufferable?
That explains a lot of the advertisements about retirement. There's all these investment commercials about saving for retirement, and then they present retirement as, well, now
Your
you've
second youth.
Right, exactly. Now you've got the money and you've got the freedom, and
Right.
and so everyone's
and at least the actors that we've chosen for our commercial have the health,
right,
and the good looks,
and they're all sitting around driving convertibles and sharing
Yeah.
outdoor bathtubs with their
Yeah,
significant others.
That's for Cialis.
Whatever, same dish.
Because there's one other element that from your youth that you're trying to recapture.
Yeah, which chemically you can.
Looking backwards on your moving sidewalk
Yeah.
to say, hey, can I extract that from that young buck and inject it in myself?
So
Can science...
So where are we going with
Here's
this? What
the
is
point.
your
Here's my point. Here's my point. You want to know my point?
Please.
I would love
You
to.
want to know
What
my
is your
point?
point?
I'm looking directly in the camera for those of you listeners not watching on video at home. My point is, we look back at youth longingly because we think that's the best it can ever be. And we think it's the best it can ever be because we have no vision of eternity. We actually have forgotten that where the sidewalk ends, we have something for us that's even better than youth.
I completely agree.
We don't have a vision. I would say we don't have a vision for heaven, but I recognize it's not really heaven that we're talking about. It's new earth, it's resurrected creation. It's everything I'm trying to teach in the video on Revelation, because we don't even know how to talk about it. We don't even know how, as I get into Revelation, I realize no one ever explained Revelation to me as a kid. All they would say is when you die, you go to heaven. Mm-hmm. Like, okay.
Or hell is real.
Yeah, or hell is real, so is or Jesus, depending on which way you're driving. So I am trying to give kids a vision of eternity that actually makes you realize it's way better than even the best of what you think you could have here. And when you recognize that, suddenly running off the end of the moving sidewalk isn't at all scary. And you don't spend your whole life looking backwards, saying, can't I go back to high school?
The other way to think about
money?
It is, from the Christian point of view, the sidewalk never ends.
That too is true. There is a big transition, though. There's a transition in your sidewalk.
Yes, but
Your sidewalk splits.
Well, I'm not sure that transition's as big as we make it out to be.
You don't know that.
I don't know that, but Dallas Willard, who recently made that transition,
he knows that.
Can we get him on the podcast?
He has a quote. I forget which of his books it's in, but he says something like the eternal life means the life that you are living now will go on forever. So we often think, well, I have this life and then I have the next life, and it's like a total restart.
Right.
And his argument is, no, there's actually continuity between the eternal life you live now and the one you will have forever.
Does your next book have anything to do with this?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, Futureville?
Futureville.
Can I say something about this?
Or Futureville? Have you decided to change the name to Futureville like I recommended a few weeks ago?
Future?
Yeah.
How do you spell that?
Footer.
No, I'm not going to do that.
Futureville. Or maybe it's a U with 2 dots over it. I don't know.
We could do a parody version.
Yes, Christian?
I think that I actually believe what you're saying, because I have experienced something very much like this.
Yeah.
So when I was in high school, during my senior year, I had an amazing high school experience. And my senior year, I had the leading role in this amazing play that had, was sold out, standing ovations, etc. Just a wonderful year.
The King and I?
No, Whose Life Is It Anyway?
Oh,
yeah.
Cool.
Anyway, the point is, when I got married and I was talking with my husband, he said to me one day, you act like all of your best years are behind you. And I said, well, they are. I did all these wonderful things and it was fun. And, I just feel like from here on out, it's all downhill.
That's sad.
And he said, I think all my best years are ahead of me. I mean, we had 2 totally different perspectives. Yeah. And I just couldn't understand how he would say that. Well, so there was this middle period where I really felt like all my best years were behind me. And then finally I realized not too long ago that I had shifted. And I was accepting that I still have a lot of awesome things that are happening ahead, but they weren't what I expected them to be.
Right.
They weren't me making it big in LA or Hollywood or whatever. It was different. But God had to reshape and reform my vision of what my life was going to be.
Mm-hmm. But even if you don't even if your high school years were your best years on earth,
right,
as we conceive it, that's still okay because there is better coming.
Right. What I'm saying is, it took me a long time to accept that.
Yeah.
You had to have the depth of that. You have to say, I'm not going to.
It's a false worldview. It's a false belief.
Do you think this is also why some parents try to relive their youth through their kids?
Of course.
Because
No.
I remember my first week in high school, my freshman year, I got in trouble in the lunchroom for some shenanigans. I ended up in the dean's office.
Will you tell us what it was?
Shenanigans.
I'll tell you what I got in trouble in the lunchroom at Bible college for.
Come on, I want to hear it.
This is not a big deal.
Dish,
as I recall, we had those big pretzels with the salt on them, and I had brushed all the salt off of my pretzel because I was worried about hypertension, and I put it on.
No,
you know those little.
You were the little hypochondriac kid.
No.
Okay.
The little paper that the pretzel would come in. I had all the salt on that, and I just took it and I went, and I flung all this salt up into some kid's face. Maybe blinded him or something. And Mrs. Hooley saw it. The lunchroom monitor.
She has eyes in the back.
And
of her head.
she was really.
You were bullying.
It wasn't a friend of mine.
That's what she said.
Whatever. So I ended up in the dean's office, and actually, I remember I wrote my name on the check-in sheet in the dean's office, and then after lunch, she's in there and she's sitting at the desk, and she calls me up, and she looks at me, and she looks at my name, and she looks at me, and then my brother had just graduated.
Oh no.
The year before that, so she looks at the name and me, and she goes, "I knew your brother." I said, "Yeah." And she said, "He was such a nice boy. What the hell happened to you?" That was her remark. And so then I end up in the dean's office.
Was that the first time you were in the dean's office?
Yes.
So that was based on one incident of salt flinging?
Apparently, I was done.
You were demoted from a good one to a bad one.
Yes.
It was a zero tolerance policy where salt is concerned.
Smokes.
That was it. So the dean gives me my detention or whatever it is I got. And he doesn't even really look at me. And then he says, "Are you going out for the football team?" And I said, "No, I hadn't planned on it." And he goes, "Well, you need to do that." And I said, "Why?" And he goes, "Because high school is the best years of your life, and it's just downhill after this. So you really need to make the most of it and go out for the football team." And I remember walking out of there. I'm 15 years old, 14 years old, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm going, if these are the best years of my life, I am really depressed because,
wow.
I mean, I didn't have a terrible high school experience, but I did not have like the mountaintop experience that sounds like you had. But that's the message I even got from the dean of the high school.
Back then.
See,
what did you do? You can't get out of it.
Bible college. In the cafeteria, I had an olive on my tray.
Did it have a name?
No, I don't even like olives, so I don't think I ever had the intent to eat it. Maybe it was a garnish. I don't know why it was there, but I picked it up and I tossed it across the cafeteria at a friend of mine.
We both had
Look at that.
food throwing
Yes,
problems.
The assistant dean of men saw me, pulled me out. I was given the punishment of washing the baseboards around the entire cafeteria. That inspired me, first of all, to go to the student handbook and look for the place where it said throwing food in the cafeteria is not allowed. It does not say that anywhere. So I wrote a persuasive speech in speech class on the fallacy of charging students for unpublished rules. And then I started a secret society. And it was actually only two people in it. It was me and my roommate, the Olive Liberation Organization. And our mission was to basically do little acts of civil disobedience because of the unfair, unjust treatment of those who were simply liberating olives from the bounds of gravity.
No wonder you got kicked out of Bible college.
Seriously. It started with an olive. And
so we would sneak out at night after we made a logo. Of course, I made a logo for the OLO, and it was an olive with a toothpick through it, and OLO. So we would sneak out at night and go around to signage in the college and just put OLO in the corner with the little logo. So it was appearing everywhere around the school, the Olive Liberation Organization. And then our ultimate stunt was before a chapel. The night before, I did a really big picture of Mickey Mouse's head, with a toothpick in his mouth, with an olive on the toothpick. And we snuck into chapel and hung it from the balcony before chapel started. And by the time chapel started, somebody had seen it and taken it down. And then we were plotting our next thing, and all this. This was fun. This is kind of how I came out of my shell, actually, was by being falsely accused of breaking a rule that did not exist.
But you did do something wrong. It just wasn't.
Says who?
It wasn't codified. It wasn't.
How do I know it was wrong? Why can't
your
olives fly?
Conscience.
My
told
conscience says olives can't fly.
You knew it was wrong.
He's got you there.
You just needed an excuse.
I knew people might not like it. I did not know it would result in severe punishment.
You thought maybe a warning would have been more appropriate?
That almost led me to a life of crime.
Did you actually clean the baseboards?
I did, all the way around the whole cafeteria.
And the whole time you're plotting.
I'm plotting my revenge. This injustice will not stand. So then I'm sitting next. There was this kind of obnoxious kid in my New Testament class, and I'm sitting next to him, and he looks over at me and just kind of stares at me. And then he looks down on his hand, and he takes a marker and writes OLO on his knuckles. And then he looks back at me. And I went back to my roommate and was like, call it off. We've been found out. Somebody knows. Because we were like defacing school property with this.
That would get you in trouble.
You know, those Christian colleges really, you guys are pretty rough.
I know. I mean,
Did you ever get caught by authorities for that?
No. I'll probably get a bill now for removing Olo. I think we put it on a couple permanent signs too, which probably wasn't a good idea. Most of it was just on pieces of paper that were stuck up for various announcements. Okay, we got an email. Got an interesting email that we wanted to discuss.
Okay.
A listener listening to last week's podcast thought the story of my Uncle Einer was interesting. I told the story of my Uncle Einer, and then my mother...
do a quick recap.
My mother pointed out to me that I misspelled Einer. It's not I-N-E-R, it's E-I-N-E-R.
There you go. Like Michael Eisner.
E-I-N-E-R, like Eisner.
Okay, sum up his story.
He was my great uncle, actually the wife of my great husband of my great aunt. He was a missionary in Irian Jaya, and he left his kids and wife and just went off for like 3 years to do missions. And actually, when he came back and walked up to his house, his daughter was out front and she didn't recognize him. He'd been gone so long that his daughter had no idea who this was. And he asked, is your mother home? And that's how he was reintroduced to his kids after being in Irian Jaya for 3 years. And so we were a little critical of the notion of kind of abandoning your wife and kids to go off and do God's work. So this was, and this is interesting. I think this is worth conversation. This is a friend of ours who's a listener, loves the podcast, says, as a pastor, I've had a lot of conversations with other pastors and leaders in the church about priorities in ministry. I hear from a lot of them that it goes something like this. 1, God. 2, family. 3, church ministry. While I agree that when I look at my current life circumstances, I would say this is true for me as well. The part I struggle with is how we often refer to this as true for everyone in every time and circumstance. Not to be melodramatic, but we have begun to construct an idol to family. Not to say that I don't love, value, and give my family priority, but can we truly say biblically that it is always to go in the order listed above? And then he mentions Matthew 19:29, where Jesus says, and everyone who has left houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother or wife or children or fields for my sake will receive 100 times as much and will inherit eternal life. This was brought up in the podcast but never dealt with. Sky mentioned 1 Timothy 5:8, and then the discussion moved on.
Which so often happens.
Yes. What? Moving on. I'm a part of the Christian Missionary Alliance. So am I. Rock on.
I'm ordained in the CMA.
Sky, he's ordained in the CMA.
I used to go to a CMA church, so
yeah.
We're pro CMA.
And I have friends who serve overseas. I've talked with some of them as they've counted the costs of the ministry God has called them to. For some, the cost has been to send their children to a boarding school for missionary kids in Germany and let someone else raise their kids for the majority of the year while they serve in a different country. Would we say they are wrongfully abandoning their children? Would we say they aren't hearing and following God? I hope you understand that I'm not trying to come in pointing the finger, but that I am truly trying to seek the Lord on this myself. Red flags go off anytime the idea of God never or God always doing something that isn't spelled out clearly in Scripture. Can we really say that God never called anyone to leave his family or children to follow him?
Very thoughtful question.
Yes, and well articulated.
And well articulated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you. What's his name?
I don't remember. Thank you.
Thank you, whoever
Thank
you
you,
were.
listener and or watcher. Now we don't know if it's a listener or a watcher.
Well, hopefully if they're watching, they're also listening.
A viewer. That would be a viewer. A listener or a viewer.
Something like that.
Watcher in the woods.
Okay, so who's weighing in first?
Sky, you want to jump in?
Well, there's so many different layers to this that I have a hard time knowing even where to begin. First of all, I think he is absolutely right that we should very, very rarely ever utter the words God always or God never.
I agree with that.
So that's number one. Certainly it is possible that God has called some people to disengage from their families or their children, whatever. God can do whatever he wants. That's not the issue.
He called Abraham to kill one of them.
Right. We discussed that.
We discussed that last time.
But then he took it back.
Right.
Just kidding.
It was a test.
JK.
It was a test. But here's the other side of it. Which,
LOL.
What he mentions earlier, the prioritization of God first, then family, then ministry. I also think that's a bit of a false dichotomy.
What do you mean?
Well, what we often will do in Christian circles is say, God is number one. God's the most important thing. And then we have something under that, whether it's ministry or family or whatever. But when you read the New Testament carefully enough, or the Old Testament for that matter, you realize that it's actually impossible to separate love for God from love for others. So Jesus says, for example, Matthew 22, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. This is the first and greatest commandment. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. When he says the second is like it, he's not just saying, oh, these are both about love. What he's saying is you actually can't do the first one without the second one. And John picks that up in 1 John 4. He tells us to love one another. Whoever loves has been born of God and knows God. Anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love. We ought to love one another because God has loved us. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God abides in us and his love is perfected in us. If anyone says, I love God and hates his brother, he's a liar. For he who does not love his brother whom he has seen cannot love God whom he has seen. And this is a theme picked up again and again and again in the New Testament, which is if you say you love God, the way you reveal that is actually by loving others. So to say, well, I'm abandoning my wife and children because I love God so much and he's going to make me go do this thing, that raises red flags for me.
For me, the notion of, because I believe in the evangelical church, we have made family an idol, but I wouldn't say it's because we're so committed to our families. I would say it's because we seem to believe that everyone has to have a family. So for me, the notion isn't, has God called you to leave your family as much as it is, has he really called you to have a family?
Right.
My great uncle Einer is one example, and his kids, from talking to my dad, who became their sibling, because they ended up being raised by my grandparents, not their own parents. They dealt with abandonment issues, serious abandonment issues. And I grew up in the CMA, that's my home denomination, in Wheaton, Illinois, which is the home of a lot of missions agencies. So there were constantly missionary kids cycling in and out of my youth group. The ones that were raised in boarding schools had issues, I discovered. And this is not scientific, but the ones that were not raised by their parents, I noticed, had some abandonment issues and typically did not have a positive view of missions, and looking back on them now, did not follow their parents into missions.
Well, and that gets to the point Paul makes in 1 Corinthians 7, where he talks about, is it better to be married or single? And he mentions that, the man who gets married has divided loyalties, because he's not just thinking about how to serve the Lord, he's thinking about how to serve his family.
And Paul doesn't say he shouldn't have divided loyalties.
But he says those who are single can just... But the point is, when you make the decision to get married and have children, then you are making a commitment to the Lord.
Right.
And if you really want to serve the Lord without any hindrance or any split loyalties, then don't get married. Right. And don't have children. Right. So does that mean God can't call you to go somewhere and do something radical after having children and being married? No, of course he can't.
My mother's aunt was a lifetime career missionary in Ecuador. Entire life, wonderful ministry, never married, never had kids. And she was happy till the day she died, in her mid-90s. She felt that, and I think some of us look at that and say, well, that's Catholic. We don't do that. We're Protestants. We felt, and this is where I think family becomes an idol.
Yeah.
Say we value family above all. If you aren't making a family, now, of course, they're in the way of your ministry, so you may have to leave them back home. But if you don't, when you have a kid, you have committed to parenting them. I just have that strong sense. And I also know missionary kids, like a good friend of mine in our small group is a missionary kid, grew up in the Philippines, has a very positive view of missions. His brother is on the mission field right now. They were with their parents the whole time.
They were missionaries as a family.
They did ministry as a family, and it positively impacted all those kids. Every missionary kid I know who did ministry as a family seems to have a positive impression of being on mission with their parents rather than their parents being on mission without them and them being excluded from participating. In fact, this guy's brother is now a missionary in Afghanistan. Okay, that's not a very safe place to be a missionary.
Nope.
He has 2 small kids. They're with him.
Well, and I, too, know a lot of kids that have gone with their families as missionaries, and they don't want to come back to the United States. I mean, a lot of them, after they have gone, have realized, wow, I don't want that life.
Well, the
back
experience of being on mission is in a really profoundly life-changing way, is life-changing.
Yeah.
You can't do it without having your life changed. I think the experience, and this will be controversial, but I think the experience of being left behind while your parents go to do life-changing work is also life-changing, but not in nearly as positive a way.
I just this week sent out the new Skybox newsletter from my site, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it was an interview with...
How do we get that newsletter, Sky?
You go to skyjatani.com and sign up for free.
The camera's over there.
Whichever camera I'm on.
No, your camera's right there.
There we go.
There,
but I did an interview with Dr. Kara Powell, who's a friend of mine, researcher at Fuller Seminary, Fuller Youth Institute, and she wrote that book Sticky Faith, which has gone like gangbusters throughout the church. And her core finding was that the most significant influence on a teenager's faith and whether or not they will stay with the faith as an adult is their parents.
Right.
I know it's shocking.
Well, that's what I keep thinking, that God gave us parents as the model for how we are to understand how he loves us. And if, our parents just go away and dump us off, what does that teach us about who God is? Subliminal. How do you say that word?
Subliminally.
That's it.
The hard part I think that people need to move toward is we have created this dichotomy between loving God and loving others, or loving God and loving my kids. And what we need to help people realize is the way I love God is by loving my wife and by loving my kids. And there's no such thing as loving God in the abstract. The way we manifest our love for God is by loving people.
Is there also the possibility? I was playing a little ukulele music because we're running out of time.
That went really fast today.
I know. We just talked and talked and talked and talked. I think it was all the great Billboard stuff.
Good thing we talked about that.
Is there a chance also that we're creating a dichotomy between, this is ministry, this isn't ministry?
Right.
Which is exactly why you need to read my new book, Futureville.
Yeah.
Is this whole podcast about plugging y'all's things? I'm going to jump in there and plug
His thing on Revelation, my thing on Futureville.
I got things out there too. And
we need to do a tour where you take your puppets to teach Revelation, and then I do like readings from my book, because it's all like that direction. And then Christian can do the voice of God narration voiceover stuff.
I could.
For all of us.
Avoiding going on tour with my puppets is exactly why I make DVDs. Because that would be a big pain in the butt.
It sure would. Your puppets are huge.
Puppets
and
don't
they're
have
really
butts.
heavy.
They don't travel well, and they hurt my wrist. Okay, so let's talk about billboards or missions.
Billboards.
Okay. When you put your faith on a billboard, don't blame the world for looking a little bored, because it doesn't really make any sense. It makes Twitter look like a really long, well-thought-out statement because you've only got about 10 characters on a billboard to make your point. Don't assume that they'll understand the joint of your argument. Joint? That
didn't work.
That wasn't very
Secular
good.
You started off really strong.
And if you want to be in global missions, if you want to go for souls a fishing, don't forget to bring along your kids. Take my word, you'll be glad that you did, because they'll learn about being on mission with God. Okay, good night.
Good night,
See you next
everybody.
time.
Bye, guys.
Drive safe.
And don't read billboards.